It was an unusually warm Friday morning when I heard the knock. I had just stepped out of the shower and was wrapped in nothing but a towel. At 67, I didn't rush for much anymore, but something about the rhythm of the knock, firm, deliberate, made me pause. I hesitated, peering through the peephole. There was no one there. Just the sound of wind brushing leaves across my porch. I stood for a moment, towel clutched tightly to my chest, heart oddly fluttering, not with fear, but with a curious sense of alertness. It's funny how age doesn't dull your instincts, it sharpens them. After all, when you've lived through enough silence, you learn to hear what others ignore. It had been nearly a decade since my husband passed. David had been the kind of man who could fix anything: broken pipes, flat tires, shattered hearts. When he was gone, the silence in the house became deafening. For a while I tried to fill it with sound, music, television, audiobooks, but nothing ever stuck. Eventually, I stopped fighting it and let the silence sit beside me, like an old friend who didn't need to talk to be understood. But that morning something shifted. I pulled on my robe, cinching it tight, and opened the door. A small package sat at my feet. No label, no markings, just my name, handwritten in familiar script. I bent down slowly and picked it up. Inside was a small, delicate silver locket. I hadn't seen it in over 40 years. I walked back inside and sat at the kitchen table, the morning light casting long lines across the floor. I opened the locket. Inside, 2 photographs, me and my sister, Evelyn. The image was worn, our smiles faded but still alive in memory. I hadn't spoken to Evelyn in over a decade. A falling out after our mother's passing had left us cold and stubborn. Years passed. Letters went unanswered. Apologies never voiced. But this locket, it had been hers. A note was tucked underneath. Just a few words. I thought you should have this now. I stared at the handwriting, running my finger gently over each curve and line. My throat tightened. I remembered the last words we said to each other. I wish I could forget them. Cruelty spoken in grief never feels justified, even when time has softened the edges. Later that day, I walked to the park near our childhood home. The benches hadn't changed. The oak tree still stood tall, its bark carved with initials of strangers who once believed in forever. I sat down on the third bench from the entrance. Our bench. I used to come here with Evelyn every Sunday when we were young. We'd split a peanut butter sandwich and dream about lives we hadn't lived yet. I reached into my coat pocket and held the locket again. I closed my eyes and felt the sun on my skin, remembering her laugh, the way it rose like a question at the end of every sentence. Maybe forgiveness doesn't always require an answer. Maybe it's enough to let go of the weight you've carried too long. That night, I called her. The phone rang 3 times before a hesitant, familiar voice answered. Hello. My voice cracked. Evelyn. There was a pause. A soft inhale. Then, I was hoping you'd call. We didn't talk about what had happened. Not right away. Instead, we talked about the garden, about the heat wave, about how her dog still hated the mailman. It was small talk, but to me it was everything. A door opening again. Over the next few weeks, we started exchanging letters again. Real letters. Ink on paper. Stories of our days. Pictures of our kitchens. Jokes only we would laugh at. We began stitching our bond back together, slowly, gently, like 2 old women threading a needle with trembling hands but steady hearts. One afternoon, Evelyn sent me a photo of us from our 20s, standing on the beach in oversized sunglasses, our feet in the water, wind in our hair. On the back she had written, "We still have time." It struck me then, how many years I had wasted thinking reconciliation was some grand act, a sweeping moment of clarity or apology. But in truth it's quiet. It's a knock at the door. A silver locket. A soft voice saying hello when you need it most. And so I started living differently. I opened the windows more. I baked bread and gave it to neighbors I'd never spoken to. I began volunteering at the library. I laughed louder. I cried without shame. I wore colors I thought were too bold for my age. I let myself feel like a woman again, not just a widow. Evelyn visited a month later. When I opened the door, she stood there with the same eyes, the same gentle smile, and a sunflower in her hand. "For your garden," she said. I reached out, not just for the flower, but for her. We hugged. Not a brief, polite hug, but a long one. The kind that stitched years together. In the quiet that followed, I knew something important had changed. Sometimes, life doesn't need to scream to be heard. Sometimes, the loudest moments come dressed as soft knocks and silent forgiveness. That knock on the door reminded me I wasn't alone. That being seen, truly seen, can happen at any age. That love, in all its forms, still waits for us in the small, quiet spaces we're brave enough to open again.